Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is the 2023 Kawasaki Vulcan S. But the 2024 Eliminator is coming, and I've had a lot of people ask me, should they wait for the Eliminator or should they just buy a Vulcan S right now? So what I'm going to do is use this Vulcan S as a comparison, because I think once the Eliminator shows up, you're going to see Vulcan S's selling very well and Eliminator selling very well, and this might be your time to save on the Vulcan S, but you should not buy this if the Eliminator is a better bike for you. So we're going to use this as an example as we wait for that Eliminator, and I'm going to go through step by step, piece by piece, the differences between this and the new Eliminator so that you can make the best decision for you. And if you want an Eliminator, you can call your local Kawasaki dealer, like the one here that is the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country, Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, but you could call them and make sure you get in line to reserve the Eliminator if that's the bike you want. So again, first things first, I'm filming here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports, and I've never filmed in this location. I just thought it's cool. There's a little merry-go-round in the back here. That's free to customers. This is part of being Canada's huggable car dealer and the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country. The cool thing about them is they give me complete access to their entire vehicle lineup. So if you have a question about Kawasaki motorcycles or something else, make sure you let me know in the comments below, and I'll make sure I come back to you both in the comments and in future videos. So let's get going with the general overview of this and do a direct comparison to what's coming in the Eliminator so you can make the best decision for yourself about which one's best for you. So the first thing we should do is talk about what this is and talk about the Eliminator and how it's a little different. First of all, the Vulcan S is a very different cruiser from most cruisers on the market. There are entry-level cruisers that are out there right now. Most of them are kind of boring. Most of them, you know, are kind of just entry-level bikes for the reason. And then there's a sport cruiser, which is this one, and then there's the big, heavier cruisers. So this is a unique bike in the class. It's got a Ninja engine. It's relatively lightweight, but the Eliminator is much lighter. We'll talk about that in a second. It has a low seat height, and the cool thing with cruisers is they're a really ideal first bike or do-everything bike. Now, the reason they're an ideal first bike is because you may not know the types of riding you want to do, but a cruiser can allow you to do that. And this right here is a big piece of that. So this one is a single seater. You could add a second seat on here, but the big thing is you can add saddlebags on there. You could throw a windshield on the front. You can turn this into a touring bike. Leave it as is. It's a great weekend runaround bike. It's a great runaround town bike. It's kind of a do-everything bike. And the cool thing is, this one here is also kind of sporty. That Ninja engine gives you good power, good torque, so you have torque like a cruiser, but you also have horsepower like a sport bike, and it gives you a little bit different riding character than a typical cruiser. Instead of having all that power down low, you can really rev it out. It also corners very well for a cruiser, and that gives you an idea if maybe you're gonna lean towards a more sportier ride in the future, you can still have this bike. You're not gonna get instantly bored with the cruiser being not sporty enough. So the Vulcan S is kind of cool. But why would we want an Eliminator? Let's talk about the differences between that and this right now. So the first thing you need to know about the Eliminator, which is of course not this bike, is the Eliminator is not really an entry-level cruiser. It's got some nice features on it, some nice components on it, and it's actually a class up from this bike in a number of different ways. We'll get to those in a second, but let's talk about some practicality things first. So first of all, the Vulcan S has what's called an ergo fit. That means it can be adjusted to fit different riders. I think it's like 5'2" to 6'2" are quite comfortable on this. I've seen bigger riders than 6'2" on this, and I've seen 5-footers on this as well. So you can really adjust this out to fit who you are. There's a lot of different ways to do that. So first of all, you can get a different height seat that can raise you up or down. You can have the pegs move a little bit forward or a little bit back, and you can have handlebars kind of move a little bit forward and a little bit back. So the idea is it's adjustable for whatever size you are. The benefit is it also allows you to have a different riding position. I'm about a mid-size person on this bike, maybe a little bit on the taller end, probably not too much on taller, about a mid-size, but you could have the handlebars out like this for a taller ride. You could bring them back for the shorter rider, and it can just give you that different seating position. So the Eliminator will also be an ergo fit bike, but I don't have the full details on how much of that is going to be flexible. Sometimes it's just the handlebar, sometimes it's just the foot pegs. One key difference with the Eliminator is, regardless of how you're going to ride the Vulcan, you have sort of the forward foot controls here. The Eliminator is going to be more square. It's going to be a little bit more of a square ride, which gives you more of what they call a standard seating position, something similar or closer to what they would have on a naked bike nowadays. So for me, I'm just far more used to riding in that standard position. That's how I've always had bikes. Even my very first motorcycle, which was a cruiser style, had that more standard position. So for me, the Eliminator is already going to have a seating position that's more familiar to me, and that makes a difference. So again, cruisers are great because they're low. They also feel very lightweight. This one is right around 500 pounds, just under 500 pounds, about 497 I think it is with the ABS. This one does not have ABS. We'll talk about that as we move through the bike as well. The Eliminator is over 100 pounds lighter than this bike, and I can tell you right now, when people get on this in the showroom, they're like, wow, this is a really light, easy, maneuverable bike. So 500 pounds isn't super light, or 497, whatever that is, 492 to 497, depending on if it has ABS or not. That's not a super, super, super light bike, but it's a very light cruiser, and because the weight is so low, even my bike, which is a little bit lighter than this, feels much heavier than this. So again, cruisers are great because the weight is so low, the seating position is so low, and as you can see, my legs are low. The Eliminator is going to give you a different feeling. It's going to feel lightweight, not just sitting on it, but also maneuvering around, and it's going to give you a different experience altogether. So it's going to move out of that cruiser class as far as a lightweight, nimble bike. This one is not what I would call nimble in the overall class of motorcycles. It's nimble for a cruiser, but it's not really as nimble as a standard bike like the Z650 or the Ninja 650 as well, which share an engine with this. So while it's sporty for a cruiser, the Eliminator is going to give you a whole new sporty feeling. So let's move on. We're going to go from front brakes or front area through the center and the back, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of differences. Let's do that right now. So let's start out front with the front wheel, and I always say you can kind of tell the entire purpose of a motorcycle by looking at the whole front wheel area. So generally speaking, this is a standard style fork. That's what you see on a cruiser. Sometimes sport bikes have the upside down forks. You're not going to have that on a cruiser, not in this class for sure. So standard style forks here, you've got a single disc brake. Now again, in the 650 class, even within the Kawasaki lineup, with this engine, you have options to get the dual front disc brakes on this engine outside of the cruiser lineup. So basically every other bike with a 650 engine that shares this engine is going to have a dual front brake. So this one is perfectly adequate for a cruiser, but let's be honest, it's a little bit less braking for the engine than on other 650 bikes in the class. Not a problem, it's still very strong brakes, but it's something worth noting. The difference on the Eliminator is you're going to have that same style brake, single-sided, but the Eliminator is much closer to the Z400 and the Ninja 400, and it only has a single disc brake. So you're kind of keeping in line with the Eliminator with a single disc brake. The Eliminator also has a bigger engine. We'll talk about that in a second here. The other difference you're going to find is cruisers often have a larger front tire than the rear tire. You do have that here, but there's only about an inch difference between the front and the rear. There's a larger difference between front and rear tires on the Eliminator, which just gives a little different feel, a little more cruiser type feel. What that means is you're probably not going to get into too sporty tires on that bike versus this bike. There's going to be a few less options than on something like a sport bike, which is 17 front, 17 rear, and you can really kind of vary it up. So less options isn't the end of the world, but it is just something to know about. Overall here, you've got good stuff. You do not have ABS on this bike, but you can get ABS on the Vulcan S. The Eliminator will come standard with ABS brakes. Taking a look at the powertrain, suspension, a few things we're going to talk about here. So first of all, like we said, this is the Ninja 650 engine. It's got a different casing here, so it gives you the look of an air-cooled engine. Different bikes are going to have different looks, but internally, they are going to have the same engine as the Ninja 650. On the Eliminator, it is a 450 here in Canada, here in North America, and that's a step up from the Ninja 400. So it's based on the Ninja 400, but it's a 450. That's likely going to give you more torque than on the Ninja 400. So while this shares the engine with the Ninja 650, the Eliminator is actually a step up from the Ninja 400. That's something worth noting. And again, with that weight difference, you may be talking similar speeds. They both have 6-speed transmissions. This is already known as a faster motorcycle than something like the Vulcan 900, which is a big V-twin. This is much faster than many cruisers on the market today, certainly many cruisers on the road, even though it's a 650 parallel twin. The design of the engine, same thing, parallel twin. So if you're hoping for that V-twin rumble, this doesn't have the rumble. This is a little bit smoother engine, allowing it to be a higher revving engine to give you more sporty performance. The Eliminator is going to be the same idea. It's a parallel twin, not a big V-twin. On a smaller engine, you're not going to really get that rumble anyway, so you might as well go for something that can rev out and give you some good speed, good power, and good acceleration, and both this and the Eliminator will do that. Moving back through here, you've got the low slung exhaust here, low center of gravity, but really the thing I want to talk about is the suspension. On the Vulcan S, you have a single shock right here. In theory, that's going to allow you to adjust it a little bit more, but it's really just preload adjustable. The Eliminator has a twin shock, so it's going to have one here and one on the other side down there. So you're going to have different shocks. In theory, this moves your center of gravity a little bit forward, whereas that would have your center of gravity a little bit further back. This one, you can adjust the preload with one setting right here. The other one, if you would do a preload adjustment, and I haven't confirmed it has preload adjustment, but I assume it does, that'll be on both sides. You'll have to sort of set that up sort of equally. So little different shock. In reality, that's probably a cost savings there, but you also have some extra features. Like I said, standard ABS on the Eliminator. We're gonna talk about a few other things that the Eliminator has that this doesn't. So this is sort of the standard setup, different than most cruisers. The Eliminator will be a little bit more similar to a cruiser with the dual rear shocks compared to the single shock here. So let's talk about the saddle and the area just behind the saddle here on cruisers. First of all, one of the most comfortable saddles in all of the 650 class, and basically anything other than a huge cruiser, is sitting right here. You have a great, good sized saddle right there, and you can add a passenger seat right there as well. So you can have a pillion there, have a second rider, have someone on the back there if you want. Now, this is a difference between the 450 Eliminator and the 650 650 Vulcan S. The Vulcan S is a bike that's going to have more overall power. I would think if you're going to take a passenger, if you're going to take a passenger regularly, you're going to probably want to move up to the Vulcan S. It's just got that little bit more torque that's going to keep it a little bit nicer. And the other thing is I'm expecting the Eliminator to be a smaller, more compact bike overall. So this one's probably going to have a little bit more space for a second person. So if you are regularly taking a second person, this is the one I would consider. But the other benefit here is you have this style of attachment right there. You can unscrew those, you can put all kinds of accessories on those. So everything from a rack up top, you can have saddlebags, and it's not just the Kawasaki accessories here. You're also going to have the option for aftermarket accessories, and I would expect the Eliminator to also have a good selection of aftermarket accessories that fit into a very similar piece. So the Eliminator has a similar piece like that, and that's a really key piece to buying a cruiser. You want something that's going to be practical. Like I said, if you're going to do an overnight tour, you're going to want some saddlebags on there. So you've got something that's made to be bolted on there. It's not just going to be hanging off and hanging loose. It's going to be properly attached, and that's an important piece. On both of these bikes, you have that ability. Like I said, the real difference is I think if you're going to take a passenger, this is the bike to get. The Eliminator, sure, short trips around there, that might be fine. And you know, to be fair, I don't even know if the Eliminator has a passenger seat accessory. I just assume it does. But I don't think it's something you're going to want to buy if that's one of your primary goals, is to take a second person regularly. So taking a look at the clutch lever here, this is also going to be a difference between the two. So first of all, I haven't seen the Eliminator. I don't know if it has the adjustable clutch levers here. I'm going to assume it doesn't, simply because that bike is loosely based on the Ninja 400, has some sort of semi-shared componentry in there, and the Ninja 400 does not have these adjustable levers, and they're pretty cool. You can set it to level 1 here, and it's a longer reach there. You can set it to level 5 here, and it's a much shorter reach. So again, if I just put my thumb, lock it in there, you can see it's about in line with my knuckle right there, and then we'll put it to level 1, and you can see it's in front of the knuckle there. So it doesn't have as much reach as some other bikes, but again, there's 5 settings of adjustable reach over here, and the same 5 settings on the brake lever on the other side. So you do have an adjustable clutch. Now, a difference between these two is this does not have a slipper and assist clutch. What that means is it's a little bit heavier clutch pull. I expect a very light clutch pull on the Eliminator 400. The other benefit with a slipper and assist clutch is it allows your rear wheel, if you just bang through a downshift, you can in theory have so much engine braking that you can lock up the rear wheel or skid that rear wheel on a bike like this. With that slipper and assist clutch, one of the benefits to that is if you bang through a downshift and have a huge rev difference when you pop out that clutch, the slipper and assist clutch can allow that internal clutch to slip a little bit extra, which keeps your wheel from slipping, which gives you a little bit more security. So there's a nice safety slash performance feature on that Eliminator 450 that you don't have here. And the bigger thing is if you're driving a lot through town and you are going to be shifting through gears on a smaller bike a little bit more anyway, so having that little bit lighter clutch is nice to have. While we're here, I just want to show you the flash to pass here. This is a really nice feature. I do expect to see that on the Eliminator 450. I can't promise it'll be there, but it is a nice little feature, just kind of get people's attention right there instead of having to hit your high beam switch over there with your thumb. So why don't we show you what the controls are here before we go over to the dash. So taking a look at the left side controls, you're probably going to have just the headlights, probably that flash to pass, signals, and horn on the Eliminator 450. I don't expect to see the hazard lights. We could, but that's something I don't expect to see. You don't always see that, and right now the Ninja 400 does not have that. So it's just something worth noting that you may or may not have the hazard lights if that matters to you on the Eliminator. Now let's take a look at the dash, because there are some big differences there in the Eliminator 450 and in this bike here. So this is the dash of the Vulcan S, and the Eliminator 450 does have, in my opinion, a nicer or at least more luxurious dash. So when I talk about that Eliminator 450 not really being an entry-level bike, usually an entry-level bike like a 450 versus a 650, usually it would get the trickle-down stuff, and the higher end or higher priced or certainly larger engine bikes would have some of the higher, fancier stuff. That's not really the case here. Now the Vulcan S has gone through some changes here, but I'll show you that Eliminator dash here. It's a digital dash which also connects to smartphone. That's something that's different. It's still going to function a lot like a analog system, so it's a never before seen dash on a Kawasaki. We always have a different TFT display for the other Ninjas and that kind of thing. So you're going to see a different cruiser style digital dash with cell phone connectivity on the Eliminator. This one here though has gone through some slight evolution over time. So as we turn the dash on there, you can see everything come to life here. What I'm going to do is kind of zoom into that digital display just a little bit here. Well, actually you can kind of see it there. You can see what's going on right now. Low fuel. It doesn't just go to the last bar. This is several bars there. It also starts flashing. So when you get down to the last bar, you don't have to get gas right away. Once it starts flashing, then you're coming down to the very bottom, and that's where this bike is sitting right now. This bike's only got 1 kilometer on it. You've got a clock up there, speedometer right there, and then you have a gear indicator. Gear indicator is pretty nice. It hasn't always been on a Vulcan S. It's just kind of something they sort of snuck in there and added one year. I don't even remember how many years ago they've added that, but it is now there, and it's really nice to have. You're going to have that kind of information on the Vulcan, or sorry, on the Eliminator 450 as well. Let's just cycle through up top. We've got the odometer right there. Hopefully you can see that. Yeah, you can see that clear enough. So we're going to cycle through there. You've got odometer, trip A and trip B right there, and then you jump into your fuel efficiency. So this can be changed. Currently it's set to kilometers per liter. I like liters per 100 kilometers, but that is your instant fuel efficiency. You can also set it to miles per gallon, that kind of thing. So a number of options in there, but instant fuel efficiency, average fuel efficiency, and then you go into your range. So your range is a calculation of how much fuel you have left based on how you've been riding. So you can see that fluctuate a little bit, but it does give you a bit of an estimate. I like it on my bike because I find like on my Z900 RS, it seems to be a little bit pessimistic on the fuel gauge. I still have like 100 kilometers and it gets down near the bottom of the tank. So having just a general idea gives you a good idea with that range. And then you go back to odometer there. So you also got the standard warning lights. You can see your signal lights there. If I turn on the four-way flashers, you've got that. High beam, you can see if I set that on. Actually, I can't turn the high beam on unless the bike's on, but you would see that over there as well. So extra little lights in the dash, extra little lights down here, and then along the side there as well. Everything you need, nothing you don't. But again, this is not as modern or as feature-packed as you're going to see on the Eliminator 450. So it's going to have a little bit nicer dash. So before we talk about which bike is best for you, let's just go over a few specs, and one of which I didn't check earlier, which did kind of surprise me. The length of these two bikes is within about an inch of each other. The wheelbase is different though. So the wheelbase on this one is 62 inches. The wheelbase on the Eliminator is 59.8 inches. So there's about a 2-3 inch difference there, just over 2 inch difference. But like I said, the length, 90.9 inches over here. The Eliminator is 88.9. So again, I guess that is a couple inch difference, but it's very similar in length. One interesting thing is you have a tiny bit more ground clearance on the Eliminator. So even though the Eliminator is going to sit fairly low and be low like this one, it does have a little bit more ground clearance. Now, does that translate into seat height? The seat height on the Eliminator is 28.9 inches. The seat height on the Vulcan is 27.8. So again, this seat is a hair lower, but I think that matters for seating position, because as you start putting your feet underneath you, you kind of need to have your feet up off the ground, so you need to have the seat up off the ground. So again, seat height's still going to be very low, going to be very comparable, but size-wise, not a whole lot difference there. The big difference is that weight. So 498 pounds with ABS, 492 pounds without ABS here. Let's just click over to the Eliminator. It is 388 pounds. So 380 pounds is a lot. Not only is that 100 pounds difference, but as a percentage, it is a big drop. It's going to give a whole different new feel, more nimble, and it really, I think, is going to take some sales away from something like the Z400. I think people who like the Ninja 400 like that Ninja look, but the Z400 is one of those bikes where people want a little different, more upright seating position. Well, the Eliminator 450 gives you a little bit more engine, gives you a little bit more cargo capacity for gear and that kind of thing, and it's also going to give you probably a more comfortable seating position. So liter and fuel difference between this bike and that bike I don't think makes a huge difference. Probably the fuel efficiency is going to even out. You'll have similar range between the two, potentially a little bit more on the 450, it just kind of depends. But those are some of the key specs between the two. So now let's talk about which one is best for you. Well, I think that Eliminator 450 is a really interesting bike. For some people, they're gonna say, hey, I can move up to a 650 for not a whole lot difference in price. This one is currently about $500-ish, $700-ish or so more expensive than an Eliminator 450, give or take. This one hasn't got ABS, other ones do. So you're gonna see this one jump in price for a 2024 model, and that's something else to keep in mind. If you know you're not gonna wait for the Eliminator, I would get this 2023 model because they tend to go up just a few $100s every single year. There's inflation and all that kind of stuff. So this one's gonna save you some money. There's no indication that this is gonna have any updates for the 2024 model year. So that's another reason not to wait. But remember, the Eliminator, even though it's a 450, is not a full entry-level bike. It's going to be a little bit above, in my opinion, a class above some of the other competitors. I think it's gonna have great performance. The Ninja 400 is really known as the class leader. That 400 makes as much horsepower as many other 500s in the class. So now you've got a 450, which is probably gonna add that torque in that you want in a cruiser, and you've got a really lightweight bike, so it's gonna be nimble and fun with a little bit more square seating position, the ability to take your luggage, the ability to throw a windshield on. It's kind of gonna be a do-everything bike, and frankly, for a guy like me, that's the kind of bike that interests me. You have a sportier bike for doing your round town sporty riding, but if you just wanna go cruising, even though that's a smaller engine, I think that cruiser engine is gonna have all the speed you need. It's gonna keep up with bigger cruisers because, like I said, the Vulcan 900 is not as fast as this 650. How much slower is the 450 gonna be? Is it slower with that 100-pound weight difference? I think these bikes are gonna be sporty and fun, and it won't feel like a big cruiser because it doesn't have that big V-twin engine. But I think speed-wise, handling-wise, that Eliminator is going to be that really interesting sweet spot. Where this one's going to have an advantage is the larger engine. Displacement does make a difference. There's no replacement for displacement. I think it's going to give you that little bit extra torque if you weigh this bike down. And same thing with going on the highway. You're going to have a little bit extra torque. Maybe you don't have to switch through the gears as much. They're both 6-speed transmissions, so it will even out. But Kawasaki bikes are generally geared for acceleration. The 650 may give you some more legs for highway passing power, but again, they're both going to have good power. So there's my overview of what's coming in the Eliminator 450. If you have not subscribed to this channel, I will have several videos on the Eliminator 450 when it shows up. If you're interested in this bike, of course, let me know your questions there as well. So make sure you subscribe. Let me know in the comments below what you want to know about the new Eliminator, what you want to know about other Kawasaki bikes, and I'll make sure I come back to you. And if you want to see this bike, the new Eliminator or this bike, get in touch with Jim Gilbert's Power Sports here in Fredericton, New Brunswick. This is the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country. And if you want to get in line for that Eliminator 450, connect with them because they can put your name on one before it comes in. And of course, you can take one of these home today. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.